The Eternal Companion, Life and Teachings of Swami Brahmananda. Part 1, Life. Chapter 1, Introduction. To write the biography of an illumined soul is very difficult, if not impossible, for his is preeminently an inner life. True, he may engage in certain external activities. He may achieve the kind of success which impresses the outer world, but all these activities and achievements, including even his spoken and written teachings, will fall far short of and fail to express the real man. An extraordinary professor or scholar teaches out of his accumulated learning. Such a man's scholarship is far greater than the man himself. That is to say, he may teach the loftiest truths theoretically without having made them a part of his own life and experience. A man of spiritual wisdom also teaches these truths, not theoretically, but out of his own experience. Nevertheless, the expression of these truths in words cannot possibly correspond to the vastness of his inner knowledge, which is inexpressible because it is transcendental. We know a man with our mind and senses, but our mind and senses cannot reveal to us the nature of an illumined soul. In order to be able fully to understand such a soul, a man must himself be illumined. When you go into the presence of one of these great beings, something very wonderful happens. His mere presence gives you, as it were, a super sense which enables you to recognize the greatness which is in him. Maharaj, as Swami Brahmananda was called, used to give us that super sense whenever we were with him. Our minds were lifted up and caught glimpses of his inner nature. But these glimpses were only partial. We were aware that the other disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, who were themselves illumined souls, could see more in Maharaj than we, his disciples, ever saw. Swami Ramakrishnanand, founder and head of the Ramakrishna Mutt in Madras, once introduced Maharaj to the devotees there, saying, "None of you have seen Sri Ramakrishna himself, but now you see Maharaj, and that is the same thing." On another occasion, a devotee brought fruit which he wanted to offer to Sri Ramakrishna in the shrine. Swami Ramakrishnanand told him to offer it to Maharaj and said, "To offer this fruit to Maharaj is as good as offering it to Sri Ramakrishna." One day I hesitated to accept something that Maharaj told me. Swami Shivanand was present at the time, and he agreed with the Maharaj immediately. I did not like this. Later, I talked to Swami Shivanand alone and more or less accused him of being a yes man to Maharaj. Swami Shivanand laughed and said, "My boy, you see in Maharaj only Maharaj, but we see the external form of Maharaj with nothing inside it but God. Whatever Maharaj tells you comes directly from God." It should be remembered that this statement was not made by a mere ignorant enthusiast, but by one of who was himself an illumined soul. Its truth was not clear to me at the time, but later I began to understand and believe it. because of a talk which I had with Maharaj himself. One day he asked me to look at the almanac and find an auspicious date for his departure from Madras. As I did so, I could not help smiling. Maharaj noticed this and asked me why I was amused. I replied, well, Maharaj, you always go through this routine whenever you plan to go anywhere. But then you suddenly make up your mind to leave on some other day. At this, Maharaj said, do you think I do anything according to my own will? The devotees insist upon fixing some date for my going, so to avoid constant pestering, I fix a tentative date. But I do not move or do anything until I know the will of God. Do you mean to say, I asked, that you are always guided by the will of God? Maharaj said, yes, myself. Well, Maharaj, I too may think or feel that I am doing the will of God, when actually I am only following my own inclinations and attributing them to the God's will. Isn't that what you do? Maharaj, no, my child, it is not the same. Myself, then do you mean to say that you actually see God and talk to Him directly and know His will? Maharaj, yes, I wait until I know His will directly and He tells me what I should do. Myself, for everything you do? Maharaj, yes, for everything I do, I have the direct guidance of God. Myself, and do you accept only those disciples He wants you to accept? Maharaj, yes. After this talk with him, I began to find some meaning in his peculiar way of acting. For example, whenever any of us asked his advice, he would say, wait, my brain is not working today, or my stomach is upset, I will answer you tomorrow. Sometimes many tomorrows would pass before we got any definite answer. But when Maharaj did finally speak, there was always a special power behind his words. How does he know the will of God? Does he go into samadhi every time before he knows it? This was the thought that continually crossed my mind. But not daring to ask him, I waited, hoping somehow to get an answer. Then one day I was discussing with another disciple the spiritual visions of Gopal's mother, a woman disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. She had been given this name because she used to see Gopal, the boy Krishna, playing with her, walking beside her, and calling her mother. I expressed my opinion that these visions of Gopal's mother belonged to the transcendental plane, and that I did not believe she had actually seen Sri Krishna with her physical eyes. Maharaj, who was sitting in his room, overheard me. He came out and said rather sarcastically, ah, so you are omniscient. But Maharaj, I asked, how can one see God in the external world with physical eyes? Maharaj simply made this statement in English. Show me the line of demarcation where matter ends and spirit begins. In other words, I understood him to say, when the eye of the spirit opens, one sees Brahman everywhere. The following teachings of Shankara in his Vivek Chudamani elucidate the following remark of Maharaj. Our perception of the universe is a continuous perception of Brahman. Though the ignorant man is not aware of this, indeed, this universe is nothing but Brahman. See Brahman everywhere, under all circumstances. with the eye of the spirit and a tranquil heart. How can the physical eye see anything but physical objects? How can the mind of the enlightened man think of anything other than the reality? In the Upanishads, we read that a knower of Brahman becomes Brahman. What is it that attracts people to a man of God? Young and old, boys and girls, men, women and children, saints and sinners, all felt an indefinable attraction to Maharaj, even if they did not in the least understand what was meant by a knower of Brahman. When I first met Maharaj, I was a boy of 18. I did not know anything about God or the realization of God. Yet I felt drawn to him as to a long lost friend who was very near and dear to me. I had never felt such a love before in my life. It was the love of parents and the love of a friend all in one. Everyone had the same experience. Once I asked Swami Subodhananda, another direct disciple of Sri Ramakrishna, the reason for this all-satisfying love which emanated from Maharaj. The Swami replied, God is love. Maharaj has realized God. Therefore, he is full of love. You did not have to be pure-hearted or spiritually minded to love Maharaj. Even the most depraved natures felt this love when they came into his presence, and many of them were transformed into saints. Maharaj did not talk to everybody about God or spiritual matters or philosophical truth. He would come down, as it were, to the level of each individual. He became that person. He had the power to uplift a man without the man's even knowing it. And when that person left his presence, he was bathed in love and purity. When you were in the presence of Maharaj, you completely forgot yourself. You felt you were in another world where there was no worry or grief, and where man was not man but divine. You were filled with a strange joy which you could neither explain nor understand. Maharaj's bearing was stately and regal. He was tall and well built, and his face was serene and joyful. His eyes were deep and seemed always to be gazing into the infinite. Whenever he looked at you, you felt that he was probing the depth of your innermost nature and that he knew all your weaknesses and failings. But somehow you did not mind this full knowledge because those eyes were so full of mercy and love. We never feared to be known by him. Then there were other times when, though his eyes were wide open, it seemed as if the universe no longer existed for him. He seemed to be living in a different world altogether. His hands and feet were beautifully formed, and they possessed a peculiar attraction. His back strikingly resembled the back of Sri Ramakrishna. Swami Turiyanand once told me how, many years after the passing away of Sri Ramakrishna, he saw Maharaj from behind, walking in the grounds of the Belur Math, and mistook him for Sri Ramakrishna himself. Once in a crowded railway station, I overheard a man who had been observing Maharaj exclaim to a friend, "Look at that man! What part of India does he come from? He isn't like a Madrasi, or a Parsi, or a Bengali, or a Punjabi. Can you guess his nationality?" And the other answered, "No, I can't. But you can see very well that he is a man of God." Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ram Krishnarpanamastu